Somewhere tonight, in a kitchen lit by the cold blue glow of a phone screen, two people are standing 3 feet apart, and it feels like 3,000 miles. Voices are rising. A door might slam. Someone will walk away shaking, replaying the words on a loop that won't stop, wondering again how something so small, dishes left in the sink, a tone of voice, a forgotten promise, became something so large it swallowed the whole room. And I want you to notice something right now before we go any further. Notice your own body as you read these words. Notice if your jaw has tightened. Notice if you already know exactly which argument I'm describing, because you were in it last week, or last night, or you are, in some quiet, unresolved way, still in it right now. Good. Stay with that feeling. Don't push it away, because what I'm about to tell you will change the way you see that feeling forever. What if your loudest arguments aren't a sign that something is broken? What if they are a sign that something ancient, something patient, something far wiser than your conscious mind, is trying to wake up? Most couples run from conflict the way a man runs from fire, certain it will destroy him. But what if I told you that fire is not your enemy? What if I told you that the friction between you and the person across the table from you tonight is the exact substance the old alchemists searched for their entire lives and never found in any furnace, any flask, any formula? They called it the prima materia, the raw, base, unglamorous matter that, under enough pressure, under enough heat, transforms into gold. You have been sitting on gold and calling it a fight about the dishes. So today, we are going to stop trying to win the argument. We are going to stop trying to fix the relationship, patch it, manage it, therapize it into submission. Today we are going to do something far more dangerous and far more necessary. We are going to let the relationship fix you. I want you to imagine, just for a moment, closing your eyes. You can do this later, but for now, simply imagine it, and picturing the last real fight you had with the person you love most. Not the words. Forget the words. I want you to feel the moment just before you said the thing you couldn't take back. That heat behind your sternum, that tightening in your throat, that old feeling, older than this relationship, older maybe than you. Because here is the secret the ancient alchemists understood in their bones, working by candlelight, transforming lead into gold not in a laboratory, but in the human soul. Transformation never happens in comfort. It happens in the crucible, and your living room, your kitchen table, your bedroom at midnight. These have quietly become your crucible, whether you asked for it or not. Carl Jung, a man who spent his entire life descending into the basement of the human psyche, with nothing but a candle and his own courage, once wrote something that should stop you cold. He said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Read that again. You will call it fate. You will say, "This always happens to me." You will say, "I always end up with people like this." You will say, "Why does every relationship turn into the same fight?" And you will believe, with total sincerity, that this is simply your unlucky story. It is not your story. It is your shadow, and it has been writing the script the entire time while you thought you were improvising. Let me take you somewhere darker for a moment, because that is where the gold is buried. Jung had a name for the parts of ourselves we cannot bear to look at directly. The anger we were taught was unacceptable. The neediness that once got us mocked or abandoned. The selfishness, the jealousy, the small cruel thoughts we never say out loud. He called this the shadow. And here is the part that should send a chill through you. The shadow does not disappear simply because you refuse to look at it. It does not evaporate because you are a good person, a kind person, a person who tries. It goes underground. And from underground, it does something remarkable, something almost supernatural in its precision. It finds someone to carry it for you. That someone, more often than not, is sleeping next to you tonight. This is called projection, and it is one of the most quietly devastating mechanisms of the human mind. You cannot see your own shadow directly. No one can. That is the nature of a shadow. It exists behind you, out of your own line of sight. So your unconscious mind, brilliant and merciless in its efficiency, throws that shadow onto the nearest available screen. And nothing in your entire life is a more perfect screen than the person you have chosen to love. Because intimacy removes distance. and without distance, there is nowhere left for the projection to land, except directly onto them. So, when you scream at your partner that they are cold, ask yourself, in the silence, after the words leave your mouth, whether you have ever, in the privacy of your own mind, been terrified of your own coldness. When you accuse them of being selfish, ask yourself what forgotten, shamed into hiding part of you once learned that wanting things for yourself was dangerous. This is not about blame. Let me say that again, slowly, because your defenses are probably rising right now, and I need you to hear this before they close the door. This is not about blame. This is about recognition. The fight is not a courtroom. It is a mirror, and you have been standing in front of that mirror for years, mistaking your own reflection for an enemy. I want you to sit with a strange and uncomfortable possibility. What if the very quality that infuriates you most about your partner is a quality you have spent your entire life exiling in yourself? Think about the recurring fight. Not a random one. The one that returns again and again in different clothing, different words, the same underlying shape. Maybe it's about control. Maybe it's about being heard. Maybe it's about feeling chosen, or feeling free, or feeling safe enough to be weak. That recurring fight is not evidence of incompatibility. It is a message arriving faithfully, week after week, year after year, like a letter your soul keeps mailing to your conscious mind, hoping that this time, finally, you will open the envelope instead of throwing it away. The alchemists had a phrase for the work we are describing. They called it the alchemical marriage, the conjunctio, the sacred union not merely of two people, but of the opposing forces within a single soul. Masculine and feminine, light and shadow, conscious and unconscious. And Jung, centuries later, looking at this ancient symbolism with the eyes of a psychologist, realized something extraordinary.
The alchemists were never really talking about turning metal into gold. They were describing, in the only language available to them, the process of psychological wholeness, individuation,
becoming, finally undividedly yourself. And where does that sacred marriage actually happen? Not in some distant temple, not in a meditation retreat in the mountains. It happens in the domestic, unglamorous, maddening friction of real intimacy. It happens over the dishes. It happens in the silence after slammed doors. It happens in the exhausted 3 a.m. conversation you didn't want to have but couldn't avoid any longer. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it. Not perform an answer for me, but ask it honestly, in the quiet part of your mind that rarely gets addressed directly. What if the partner you keep trying to change is not an obstacle to your peace, but the exact instrument your soul selected, with uncanny precision, to force you toward the parts of yourself you have spent a lifetime avoiding? This is the reframe that will make some people deeply uncomfortable, and I understand why. It is far easier to believe your partner is the problem. It is far easier to imagine that if you simply found a calmer person, an easier person, a person who didn't trigger you, the fighting would stop, and peace would finally arrive. But the alchemists knew something that most modern relationships are built to avoid at all costs. Comfort does not transform lead into gold. Only pressure does. Only heat. We are not here today to teach you how to avoid conflict. We are here to teach you how to stand inside it without being destroyed by it. How to recognize, in the very moment your chest tightens and your voice rises, that you are standing at the threshold of the crucible, and that what happens next determines whether that fire consumes you or refines you. Before we go further, I need you to understand exactly what happens inside the nervous system in that moment of conflict, because your body has been telling you a story your mind has never fully translated. And once you understand this story, you will never be able to see a simple argument as simple again. And here is where the story gets physical. Because the shadow does not only live in the mind, it lives in the body, coiled in the nervous system, like an old animal memory that never got the message the danger has passed. In the exact instant your partner raises their voice, or turns away, or says the one sentence that lands like a blade between your ribs, something ancient activates beneath your conscious awareness. Your amygdala, that small almond-shaped sentinel buried deep in your brain, does not know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a raised eyebrow across the dinner table. It only knows threat. And so your body does what bodies have done for 200,000 years. It floods you with cortisol. It quickens your heart. It narrows your vision until the only thing that exists in the entire universe is the person standing in front of you, and the unbearable urge to fight, or to flee, or to freeze into silence. This is why you have said things in anger you would never say in peace. This is why, 20 minutes later, calm again, you look at the wreckage of what just happened, and think, that wasn't even me, and you were right. It wasn't the whole of you. It was a much younger part of you. A part that learned long before you had language that conflict meant danger, that raised voices meant abandonment, that being truly seen in your need was a risk almost too great to survive. I want you to notice something as you read this. Your breathing right now, in this moment. Is it shallow? Is it caught somewhere high in your chest? Simply noticing this, simply bringing your breath 1 inch lower, into your belly, is already the beginning of a different kind of power. Because the moment you can observe the wave of activation inside you, instead of becoming the wave, you have done something extraordinary. You have created a sliver of space between stimulus and response, and, in that sliver, Jung would say is the entire location of human freedom. This is the first secret of turning conflict into gold. Not suppressing the fire. Not pretending you feel calm when your whole body is screaming otherwise. But learning to stay present inside the fire long enough to ask a single, transformative question in the middle of the heat. What is this really about? Let's go deeper into the mechanism. Because understanding it will change how you experience your very next disagreement. Jung believed the psyche is not a single unified thing, but a kind of inner family, a council of parts, some of them conscious and welcomed, others exiled long ago and left to wander the basement of the unconscious. When you were a child, certain emotions were safe to show, and others were not. Perhaps anger got you punished, so you learned to swallow it, and it went underground. Perhaps need got you mocked, so you learned to perform independence, and your need went underground too. Every emotion you were not allowed to feel safely in childhood did not disappear. It became a shadow, waiting, and here is the haunting part. We do not fall in love randomly. On some unconscious level, we are drawn to people who will eventually, inevitably, force those exiled parts back into the light. This is not romantic mythology. This is psychological law. You did not simply meet your partner. Something in you recognized something in them. A frequency, an old familiar wound, a shape that matched the shape of what you buried long ago. This is why the same fight returns. It is not because you chose the wrong person. It is because you chose exactly the right mirror. And mirrors do not lie, even when we beg them to. Consider the fight about control. On the surface, it looks like scheduling, like decisions, like who gets the final say. But beneath the surface, for one partner, it may be an old terror of being small and powerless, in a house where nothing was ever within their control. And for the other, it may be an old wound of being smothered, of losing themselves inside someone else's needs. Two shadows, meeting in the kitchen, disguised as an argument about a vacation itinerary. Consider the fight about distance, about one partner needing space, and the other feeling abandoned by that space. This is rarely about the actual hours in the day. It is often two nervous systems, shaped by two different childhoods, negotiating an ancient question neither of them has ever consciously asked. Is it safe to need someone? Is it safe to be needed? This is the moment I want you to slow down and really receive what I'm about to say, because it will either land as devastating or as liberating, depending on how ready you are to hear it. Your partner is not doing this to you. Your partner, in their own woundedness, their own unconsciousness, their own long-buried exile of self, is doing exactly what you are doing, reacting from an old script neither of you wrote consciously, which means the enemy was never across the table. The enemy, if we can even call it that, was always two shadows, unmet, unspoken, colliding in the dark and mistaking each other for the source of the pain. This is the alchemical marriage, not a wedding, not a ceremony, a daily, repeated, often painful confrontation between what is conscious and what has been exiled, played out through the person closest to you, because closeness is the only condition under which the unconscious feels safe enough to finally surface. Now I want to give you something practical, something you can carry into your very next disagreement, because insight without practice is simply another form of avoidance dressed up as understanding. The next time you feel that familiar heat rising in your chest, next your voice wants to sharpen, or your body wants to leave the room, I want you to pause, even for 3 seconds, and silently ask yourself one question. How old is this feeling? Not how old are you? How old is this feeling? Because very often, if you are honest, the answer will surprise you. It will not feel like the fully resourced adult who pays bills and drives a car and holds a job. It will feel 5, it will feel 11. It will feel like a much younger version of you, activated by a moment that has almost nothing to do with the actual dishes in the sink, and everything to do with a much older, much rawer wound finally getting an audience. This single question, how old is this feeling, is one of the most powerful pattern interrupts available to the human mind, because it does something your nervous system cannot ignore. It creates distance between the emotion and your identity. You are no longer simply angry. You are noticing anger in a much younger part of yourself, being triggered by a present moment that resembles a past wound. And the instant you can notice this, you are no longer purely reacting. You have stepped, even briefly, into the position of the alchemist, standing outside the crucible, observing the transformation rather than being consumed by it. I want you to imagine, and really imagine this, your next argument unfolding differently. Not because the conflict disappears. Conflict, remember, is not the enemy. Imagine instead that in the heat of it, some quiet observing part of you turns inward and whispers, "This is old. This is not only about tonight." And instead of reaching for the accusation that would have deepened the wound, you find yourself reaching, however imperfectly, for the truth beneath the anger. Not "you never listened to me," but "I am terrified of not mattering to you." Not "you're so controlling," but "I never learned it was safe to trust someone else's hands on my life." This is the moment lead begins to change into gold. Not when the fighting stops, but when the fighting finally tells the truth. And this is precisely why running from conflict, the very thing most couples believe will save their relationship, is often the thing quietly killing it. Because every avoided fight is an unopened letter. Every swallowed resentment is unrefined lead, sitting untransformed, growing heavier with each year it goes unspoken. The couples who disappear into a cold, comfortable silence, who stop fighting entirely, have not achieved peace. They have simply closed the furnace door on a transformation that was trying desperately to happen. Your soul does not want comfort. Your soul wants wholeness. And wholeness, the alchemist knew, the mystics knew, Jung knew, staring for decades into the darkest corners of the human psyche, is never born from avoidance. It is born from the sacred, terrifying willingness to stay in the room when everything in you wants to run, and to ask, in the middle of the fire, not "how do I win this?" but "what is this fire trying to make of me?" So the next time the voices rise in your kitchen, the next time the door wants to slam, I want you to remember this moment, right now reading these words. Remember that you are not failing at love. You are being invited into it, more deeply than comfort ever could have taken you. The dishes were never the point. The gold was never going to arrive without the heat. And the person standing across from you, flawed, wounded, achingly human, just like you, may be the exact alchemist your soul chose, long before your mind understood why. To finally help you come home to yourself.